So our next speaker is a longtime friend, way back from the Body Media days in fitness tech. He was formerly the managing director with OMERS Ventures. He's currently the managing partner with OMERS Ventures. And he joined OV in 2019, and he used to work for Yahoo. He is an expert in all things wearable tech, as far as I'm concerned. But I'm very pleased to announce our next speaker, Michael Yang, managing partner of OMERS Ventures.
Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Living in Digital Times, for having me. I've been up here a few times over the years because I really love this category and I really love this space. But I thought I'd do a retrospective because it's kind of nostalgic for me. I've been coming almost a decade now, and give you my perspectives from a venture capital or investors landscape on the wearables market, how it's done, and where it's going in the future. So real quick introduction on my new venture capital fund, which is OMERS Ventures. We're an 8-year-old technology venture fund based in San Francisco and Toronto. So let's start off. What is a wearable? You guys are all the experts here in the room. We've already heard a lot of diversity on what wearables and wearable tech could actually mean and apply to. But if you just go to the man, woman, or child on the street, they're going to give you a very different answer. To them, wearables today is predominantly associated with the Apple Watch. Okay? It is shocking how much mind share Apple has come to dominate in that category, which is wearables, based off of that particular device. The other trend that we see when you ask kind of this question unaided, especially in the tech community, and I hail from Palo Alto, and we talk about this a lot, is you hear about companies like Magic Leap, right? So I think the whole augmented reality, virtual reality, head-worn space is coming into the broader wearable space as well. And from a venture perspective, we are always looking for the next generation computing platform. And we've always posited that wearables had the potential to be that next computing platform beyond mobile, beyond the internet, and the whole 9 yards. But today, as we've already seen, wearables is all parts of the body. You know, what started years ago with simple devices tracking activity on the wrist predominantly has now transcended and encompassed the entire footprint of the human physiology. And we have interesting sensors, interesting form factors that are covering it all. But not just human bodies. Increasingly, in the venture community, we're getting business proposals and pitches for wearables that are talking to other species on our planet, whether it be cats, dogs, horses. I'm waiting for someone to give me a pitch on wearables for fish in the fish tank. But let's back up. When I first started coming to this show, even 8, 9 years ago, you could equate 2010, 2011 like the industrial era, you know, like the old industrial era. You know, we were looking at devices like those on the right and postulating that Nike was going to really run the table and kind of rule the world. And back then, the questions were really around, could you actually build it, right? It's hardware. That's hard. Could you actually do it? Do you know how to go to China and Shenzhen and actually build it? Could you raise money off a Kickstarter and Indiegogo to kind of get you up and running? And what would you actually sell it for? What would people possibly pay for some of this new hardware that was coming into the market? Fast forward to today, and you've seen some of this stuff already. Yeah, it feels like Westworld, right? You know, we have interesting clothing and garments. From Seismic, who was here earlier today. We have Muse and things in the meditation and calm and kind of brain space. We have North and Focals and other head-worn devices kind of coming out that are fashion forward. You know, so it's a whole different set of conversations. We're constantly talking about algorithms, AI, ML, science. We're talking about new types of business models, which are more monthly recurring revenue as opposed to one-time hardware sales. And this is changing the game, and nice evolution from 2011 to today. But the question still bears relevance is, have we crossed the chasm in wearables? Is this a meaningful technology product category that people at large are caring about, right? You see lots of interesting charts that go up and to the right and show really big numbers. But the funny thing from an analyst, from a journalist, from an investor perspective is we like to move the goalposts out, right? Just when you thought you hit a particular milestone, it's no longer good enough. You have to do better than what your predecessors have done in the category. Is 1 out of 4 Americans wearing a wearable? Do you actually think that's real? When you're back at home in your communities, do you see that? TBD. For us, we focus our analysis on the wearable market into 4 major segments, and we've picked these 4. This is not meant to be mutually exclusive or exhaustive on a complete basis either, but these are the ones that we think are the ones that have more critical mass. That means you have more players, more suppliers, more participants in it, more innovation. And what I would say is where wearables originally started, more in the lifestyle category, you see some of these names. And every year I can put up different names and different logos. But obviously some big ones are starting to emerge over there. Apple, Fitbit, Another interesting category, which I've already alluded to, is augmented reality. We still haven't bridged the AR, VR track that is here at CES with kind of wearables and some of the other things. But these are really big technology players with really smart people with access to capital doing a lot of interesting things, predominantly focused on the head, the brain, optics, and the whole 9 yards. When you have Google, when you have Microsoft, when you have Snap, when you have Magic Leap, one of the most prolific privately funded companies ever in the world kind of going after it, something's going to happen. Another category that we are increasingly studying and would say needs to be put on the map more and more is hearables. Okay, the whole ear and the sensors and the physiology on the human anatomy that go around that offer some really interesting things. Again, here at CES, you've always had quote unquote a hearables category, but it's more in the audio kind of headphone, music, entertainment kind of category. But there's more intelligence being brought to bear here. There's more sensing being brought to bear here. And we think that bridge is kind of coming in the future. And I think the one notable thing is, if I were going to animate this slide, I'd also have Apple not only in lifestyle, but also down in hearables through their AirPods. And then obviously the last one is medical. There are health tracks here. We often talk about the health benefits and the health use cases for wearables. We think increasingly that's going to happen in core chronic conditions, and we'll be talking about that more and more later today too. So what have we actually learned? Now that we've laid out the segmentation, we've laid out some numbers and all that kind of stuff, here's what I would say from an investor perspective. The markets haven't been as big as we would like them to be. Outside of very basic activity tracking lifestyle, individual use case and markets in wearables have not been as big as financial investors would like. The other thing is the growth rates have not really gotten there too. We're not seeing mass units sold, tremendous billions of revenues being sold in this category just yet. It still needs to kind of hit that point. The other thing is it takes more money and it takes longer to do all this kind of stuff, right? That's challenging for those of you who are providers, manufacturers, suppliers of this technology. And I think the most critical factor is we have not convinced the average mainstream consumer or user, in whatever context and use case you're going after, to really change behavior for how they do it previously to how they're going to do it leveraging your wearable. So that, to me, is the biggest problem that we still need to increment on and continue to work on. Like every category, and we had the Gartner hype cycle up earlier, there is carnage on the road along the journey. It's a hard journey, right? These are all impressive companies, talented people who have raised meaningful amounts of money, yet they did not fulfill the promise and the aspirations that they had. The other thing is, even if you're deemed a success, that success can be temporary, it can be fleeting. Fitbit is a tremendous company. In 6 years, roughly, they went from selling 60,000 units a year to over 22 million units a year. If you just threw out those numbers and said, hey, would you like to be a wearable company that had that kind of track record? I think everybody in the room would raise their hand and say, I'll take that. They also went public. But the public capital markets punished them, right? it's disappointment when you go out at a $20 price per share, you trade as high as $47, and now you're down in the kind of $4 to $5 range. Today, from a financial perspective, Fitbit is trading largely at 1x revenue, which is not a high multiple, which means that Wall Street is not preferring it as a stock relative to a lot of other places. Another great company was Withings, right? And they're back at the show this year with a really interesting set of products that they've announced. But they were the belle of the ball from a privately held venture-backed company for a while. They sold to Nokia back in 2016 for close to $200 million. And then what happened? Many great acquisitions go on to die within larger companies, and they ended up selling it back to the founder, who's obviously reinvented it and kind of turned it back around. But even successes like a Fitbit or Withings, they have to last generations to ultimately provide the halo and the stamp of success that we all need in the wearables category to continue to kind of generate positive momentum. So where does that leave us? My thoughts are this, as we're in kind of an evolution and still kind of needing to kind of improve ourselves. Wearables cannot be about the hardware. Too often we talk about the mechanical components of it, right? Hardware, from everything I've just talked about, has been demonstrated by the financial community to be insufficient as the solution. It has to be a component, but not the entire solution, okay? The other thing is we need to figure out how to maintain or engender an ongoing relationship with the end user. This can be done through ongoing updates of the solution. That could be incremental content, that could be new applications, that could be accessories, but it cannot be a one-time ship and then you're basically done. I think we've also determined that humans are very communal type species. We like interacting with other people. That could be your peers, could be coaches, which we've seen earlier today. That could be medical professionals and instructors, but that needs to be woven into the solution as well. And then I think for sure from a VC's perspective, we are only looking for recurring revenue. If you've got a business model which is a one-time business model from a revenue perspective or a sales perspective, it is just not compelling anymore. And then lastly, I would say find a very, very compelling, well-known, easily understood consumer use case. I give two examples on the bottom. One you're going to know, and one you're probably like, who are these other guys? Peloton, right? People thought they were crazy. I'm going to sell you a $2,000 bike for your house. It was never about the bike. It was about the $40 a month I'm going to charge you for the content. And it wasn't just you're going to watch some content. That content constantly changes. It's also very communal. It can be competitive. It can be supportive, right? Today, the estimates on Peloton is that it's $1 billion company. Half the revenues come from selling the bike. The other half comes from selling the content. Guess which one's growing faster than the other, right? If you're charging $40 a month, 12 months a year, and you've got about 1 million people paying that, that's a pretty darn good business model, regardless of the couple 100,000 people that are speculated to have actually bought the bike. Carrot, smoking cessation. Very different use case, but very clear. If you're a chronic smoker, you can't break that habit, you'll do anything to kind of do it, to stop, right? You could do patches, you could take drugs, you could try behavioral therapy, all that kind of stuff. Carrot is a digital health solution which combines a smoking breath sensing device. So it's not a wearable, but I use this as an analog for this audience. You breathe into it, it detects and reads a bunch of things, it scores you, and then through the app, it will start to provide personalized content for where you are in your smoking cessation journey. It'll give you exercises. It'll start to connect you with your coach. Your coach will have all your readings. Your coach will be able to interact with you, tell you what to do, right? And the interesting thing here is it's reimbursable and paid for by other constituents. It doesn't need to be a consumer pay kind of model. So, these are the kinds of things that are getting venture interest and venture capital funding and have proven different business and commercial evolutions to kind of the things that I've talked in the past. So with that, I will stop here.
So Michael, what was your first big adventure in wearables?
It was Body Media, as you know. Yeah. I put myself back on that slide in 2011 with a gnarly wearable armband that was up here. And some of the lessons there were that we still need to refine the user behavior question. Could you get someone to permanently or perpetually wear that? And what was the ongoing stickiness to kind of do that? It was less about price point. It was less about the sensors and the science. And it was really novel from a peer review, sensor fusion, and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, what makes Fitbit more of a success, or Apple Watch more of a success than some of these other things that were more clinical and scientific, is that you had to really warm your way into the hearts of the consumer and make them make the decision to do it, not you pushing it on them.
Right. So do you think we should talk about Evo since he didn't show up?
Sure.
I think we should. No. That wouldn't be nice. Evo was I used to call him the grandfather of wearables, which he really didn't appreciate because I'm about 5 years older than he is. So, but he is now on Glass. Can I even say that? Google X?
He's at Google X.
He's at Google X. So, and he was going to do a fireside chat for us, but unfortunately Google shut that down. So we have Michael, and he has more expertise in the wearables area than you could possibly shake a stick at. So I hope you will pick his brain at lunch. He'll be around, and he'll be moderating a panel later today. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Julie.